In the last video, we talked a lot about the importance of listening to communities and of developing leadership within communities and within individuals who participate in your community centre or hub. Alongside this, it's really important to acknowledge that leadership within the community development worker is really pivotal to all of this happening. And so we need to talk about what are the leadership and people skills required for this work. What we'll talk about here is general leadership qualities, and then specifically looking at the areas of volunteer management, stakeholder management, and the support and development of our participants. We'll also touch on handling stress and conflict, which is of course inevitable when working with people. Leadership in a community setting, although we are aiming for a decentralised service environment, a community development practitioner must really be a leader as well. And leadership here, we can think of it in terms of the definition given as the art of motivating a group of people towards achieving a common goal. So we don't necessarily name the goal or define the goal strictly from our own vision. If we're decentralized, we're looking at the community coming up with its own goals. But then it's part of our work is in bringing people together and motivating them towards achieving that. And there are a very broad range of skills and approaches that go into leadership. Some of them are listed here: vision and creativity, motivation and encouragement, support and understanding of people, the ability to build a team, the ability to have attention to detail, looking at continuous improvement, always trying to get better, and having a very broad range of skills in running programs, projects, and operations. So there's a lot involved. And it's really hard to define leadership beyond a very general level, mainly because leadership often looks like the personality of the leader. And so there are a lot of leadership styles, and we need to think for each community development practitioner, what is the leadership style going to look like? How does your personality influence how you go about all of these skills and practices in leadership? How do you perform and respond in different situations? How do you respond under stress? How do you handle uncertainty? So the questions you need to ask yourself, and this is where the importance of reflexivity comes into play, the ability to look at yourself and to look at where you need to improve, is where are your strengths? Where do you need support? And what are the areas where you need to be careful, where you're not sure that you're going to be able to provide the best possible response? You're going to need support, or you're going to need additional development to be able to move forward in that area. You also need to think about how well and how quickly you can learn within a given context. Can you learn quickly? Can you change quickly? Can you adapt? Or do you need to be able to prepare yourself for new situations? There are a huge number of leadership practices. Some of the ones that I find are fairly important are the reflective and reflexive awareness, the ability to understand yourself and your own motivations, but also the ability to understand and review external situations and events. Communication and decision making, being able to make clear decisions, communicate with people quickly, reliably, and in a way that they trust and respect. Managing pressure, staying calm in difficult situations, being able to engage in difficult conversations when they arise, not avoiding conflict and challenging situations. Being able to understand people's values and motivations, which is really lifelong learning in this regard. The more you can understand where people are coming from and why they want what they want, the easier it is to work with them, and I guess the more predictable the situations become in the community development space. Attention to detail, I keep talking about, just being able to cover off on all the things that need to be done just makes the work so much smoother. Being engaging, encouraging, supporting and motivating, that makes a lot of sense in the community development space. Keeping things as simple as possible. People look for simplicity, and if we can avoid getting into an over complex or exhausting approach, then it's going to make life a lot easier wherever possible. We need to keep working hard at all of this, and we need to be setting an example of the vision that the community is aspiring to. So if the community wants a safer environment, an environment with more opportunities, how are we presenting ourselves and our work in a way which is supporting this? So these are big questions, and they all need to be looked at throughout our lifetimes in the practice of community development. So looking at volunteer management specifically, and this is a big area. I'm not suggesting that this is going to give you everything you need to know about volunteer management. It's going to be valuable if you're working with volunteers to undertake other detailed training in this area. But some basic principles that it's good to start with in terms of working with volunteers. Really, the first one is that we always need to remember volunteers aren't staff. They're not paid to be here. So their motivations are going to be different to a paid staff member. The methods for managing them and supporting them and recognising them are quite different. And in some contexts, volunteer management can be quite poorly understood. Volunteers aren't looked after, and people wonder why they're not keeping their volunteers as a result. It's really important to understand your volunteers' motivations for being there. What is it that inspires them? What gives them their energy to come into your workplace and to do what they do, to spend their time and energy doing this work? What is the scope of their interest? What activities are they going to be happy doing? You can't always get volunteers to do things that they don't want to do. The capabilities of volunteers vary widely, and their support needs vary widely as well. You need to learn fairly quickly about the abilities and the support requirements of your volunteers, because this can take up a lot of your time. Things to remember with volunteers is it is very important to involve them in decision making that's relevant to their role. This keeps volunteers well engaged. Give as much definition and clarity to their roles as possible. Make boundaries very clear from the outset. Boundary blurring and crossing of boundaries can be a big issue with volunteers. Obviously, make sure that you've connected all of the requirements and expectations and definitions of volunteer roles with the policies of the organisation you're working for. Keep this all very clearly connected and aligned. This is not just to protect the organisation, but it's also to give a sense to the volunteer that when you're giving a particular direction, this isn't just your own personal perspective. This is the organisational basis that you're articulating. You need to ensure that the group norms and respect among the volunteers remain strong. This is day-to-day work. This is never something that you just set and forget. People are people, and volunteers bring their own personalities and their own dynamics into the space, and you need to keep an eye on this day by day. Training and recognition and appropriate levels of rewarding are really important with volunteers. And by saying appropriate rewarding, it's important to recognise that a lot of volunteers don't want to get a lot of recognition. Some of them don't necessarily want to get clear rewards for their work. They're doing it for their own personal reasons, and they don't want external rewards for that. But to be able to recognise it in a way that's accepted by the volunteers is incredibly important. Giving the training and support that they need, as well as training and support which helps them to grow and develop in ways that they want to grow and develop, is going to just make it a very much more positive environment. Managing volunteers can actually feel more challenging than managing staff. I believe that if you can manage volunteers, then you can manage staff. It doesn't necessarily work the other way around. It is a great skill to learn, volunteer management. Stakeholder management. So here we're talking about external people, external resources and supports that can aid the work that you're doing in your community development environment. What do you actually need from the external environment in order to support what you're doing? Who are the people who can help you? The service providers, trainers, funders, people who have influence. It's important to develop an awareness of the context that you're working in. Do your research on people in other organisations. Find out who you know, but also among your networks, who do they know? It's surprising how you can broaden your networks in this way once you start asking the right questions. If you want to connect with people and build stakeholder relationships, the more planning you can do around this, the better. Why would they be motivated to connect with you and talk to you? You can't just assume that people are going to be nice and want to listen and join in with what you're doing. Why would they be interested? Is there an alignment of vision or mission? Is there going to be a mutual benefit? Are there shared values that you can draw on? Confidence in stakeholder engagement comes with experience. So unless you're one of those people who's just a natural people person and can connect with people, this will come with practice. If you're getting into connections with people in positions of power, be sure to remain aware of your own thoughts about how important people are. Don't come across as nervous. People are still people, and even ministers and government ministers and so forth, you can still have a very human conversation with them. Treat them like any other person. I think they actually enjoy that. If you feel like you need support around working with people in higher levels of authority, I'm definitely looking at having support or a mentor in this. Somebody who's had experience in this can be quite helpful. Of course, be sure to follow your workplace protocols around engagement, particularly if you're going to be connecting with people in positions of power and influence. The last thing you want is for political factors to start having an effect on your work, and for your workplace to be asking questions about why have you been speaking with this person. Be sure to talk with your management about the people you're connecting with. Keep that very transparent. Generally, your own communication skills, your people skills, the values alignment that you can identify and articulate with the people that you connect with, or the mutual benefit that you can articulate, and your understanding of the relevant context in which you're engaging will have the key effect on the success or failure of your engagement and your stakeholder management activities. Support and development of your participants. You need to start here with a clear awareness of your professional boundaries in your role, because it can be very easy to slip into getting too involved in the needs and issues and dramas of the participants' lives in your centre or hub. You need to be able to obviously listen and observe and engage and consult with people to understand where they're coming from, what their needs are, what their strengths are, and what supports they need. And from that, you need to be able to understand what time do I have to provide support and where is my energy best placed. The growth of participants within your environment will be endless, really. You can only do so much, and you don't want to shoulder all of that responsibility. You need to let people have the time and space to develop for themselves. Your own self-care and self-management matters in the long run. You don't want to be burning out. Building networks of support and having activities to keep yourself grounded and refreshed are critically important. And remember, this all comes back to building capacity within individuals and groups themselves. Your role isn't to keep supporting people endlessly. There needs to be a point where people understand, in a community development environment, they are there to understand their own strengths and to build them. Managing stress and conflict. This is going to be inevitable when working with people. Your preventative strategies are really important here. This can save a lot of energy in dealing with pointy-ended conflict later down the track. So being proactive and consistent in your communication, getting messages across early, setting boundaries, setting expectations, and then holding to that consistently. Being collegial, being genuinely friendly and open and welcoming to people does wonders. Having humour, laughter, and high-spirited talk and positivity of all forms really is going to help avoid conflict. It keeps people relaxed, keeps people feeling safe in their environment. Values reinforcement. So your environment is there for a reason, you're there for a reason, and your participants are there for a reason. So it's finding the common reason why people are there, and everybody has something that unifies them in the environment that you can keep coming back to. Alignment of power bases. So this is about being aware that there are power dynamics within groups, and if there's a group or an individual who are particularly influential, it's being sure that you've done your groundwork with them to have a common understanding, so you've got leverage with them if things become difficult or if conflict arises. You're able to connect with them quickly through having developed a relationship in a low stress context. In managing stress and conflict, you really need to know your own triggers, your own aversions, and how you respond to stress and how you respond to a conflict environment. Your actions are going to be looked at and will be used as a model for how we act in this space when difficult situations arise. So you need to remember you're a role model and to be well aware of yourself in that context. Strategies for managing stress and conflict. There's quite a lot of resources available for this. Broadly, there are a few different strategies you can undertake. Problem solving and finding common ground is one key area. It's getting down to, okay, there's a problem, how do we fix that, how do we move on? Communicating and reconciling can be a very important one in the community development space, where you have people who are going to be around each other for a very long time. They need to be able to communicate well with each other and find ways of understanding and moving on when things aren't ideal and aren't likely to get to become ideal in the long term. Compromising and accommodating strategies are really around where there's a limited ability to find a perfect answer, and we need to support people to follow through with a decision which isn't their ideal, isn't what they really wanted, but there's aspects of that are good. It's better than staying in conflict, and learning to just get on with things and not get too caught up in going back to the causes of the conflict. Avoiding conflict can sound counterintuitive, but sometimes as a leader in the community development space that you're in, getting caught up in every little conflict can be counterproductive as well. So sometimes there's it's a good idea to pick your battles in a sense, or to give people the message that you're not going to jump in to the ring with them every time that someone raises a concern. So hopefully you don't need to go too in depth with conflict management in your environment, but if you find that there are issues with stress and conflict in your space, by all means have a look at the strategies that are available and how people have experienced utilizing these strategies to address conflict. Knowing the people involved is going to help you to pick the right strategy in a given context. So take the time to get to know people when there isn't that level of stress. Some problems take time to fix. Some problems don't get resolved when you first try to fix them. Some problems will never go away. So don't set too high a bar for yourself in this. Just do the best you can. Keep trying strategies, keep connecting with people, and keep being genuine. And of course, keep looking at yourself and how you're responding, how your stress levels are being managed throughout this whole process. So resources and homework. I haven't listed resources here because really there are an endless number of resources around developing your own leadership and your own approaches to leading in a community development space. It's best for you to go and search these out yourselves. But to begin with reflexivity or your own personal reflection, where are you uncertain and uncomfortable? Where do you feel that you need to develop your strengths? It's important to be really honest with yourself about this, and then find out who can help you with this. Will you benefit from having support or mentoring from peers or from someone else who you trust? And allowing yourself time and space to learn and develop in leadership is really important. Are you able to give yourself, say, an hour a week to develop yourself in the areas that you need to develop in? And this can involve doing your own research, reading case studies and reflecting on them, undertaking active peer support or mentor support, or doing structured study in leadership or some of the relevant skills involved. This is really an area of lifelong learning. I strongly encourage you to pursue this as broadly as you can. It'll have great benefits for your community development work.